I didn't kill anyone. But the man I once called my husband nearly killed everything I was with one carefully constructed lie. From the outside, our life looked pristine. The glossy Christmas cards, the neighborhood barbecue smiles, the spotless kitchen counters in Instagram posts. Marcus and I were the couple everyone envied. He was a successful real estate developer in Atlanta, always polished, always charming. I was a nurse 38, steady, quiet, dependable. We had a 14-year-old son, Elijah, who somehow managed to be both brilliant and kind, with a quick wit that reminded me of the boy Marcus used to be. But people forget, surface calm often hides deep fractures. At home, things were different. Marcus had changed. Or maybe I had finally stopped making excuses. He no longer asked about my day. His phone lived in his pocket, always face down. He started working late, coming home with the scent of cologne I didn't recognize, brushing past me like I was part of the furniture. I told myself it was the stress. The market. The economy. Men collapse inward when pressured, isn't that what all the articles said? I tried harder. Made his favorite meals. Kept the house cleaner. Even took up yoga, hoping to appear more relaxed, more appealing. But nothing softened him. The cold in his voice was the kind that didn't leave traces but left bruises just the same. There were moments, tiny, flickering moments, when I considered confronting him. But then Elijah would come into the room, asking for help with homework, or telling me about a coding project he was working on, and I would tuck my suspicions away. My son needed peace, not parents at war. Elijah was my anchor. Every morning, he hugged me like he meant it. He still thanked me for dinner, still sat next to me during movie nights, still noticed when I looked tired. One night, he slipped a note under my bedroom door that read, "You're doing a great job, Mom. I see you." I cried into my pillow that night. Quietly. Always quietly. Marcus didn't hit me. He didn't scream. He didn't cheat in ways that left receipts or lipstick stains. What he did was more insidious. He erased me in increments. Turned me into a shadow in my own life. There was a dinner party once, at the home of one of his colleagues. Marcus poured wine for everyone, cracked jokes, touched my back when people were watching. I smiled through it. But later, when we got home, he didn't say a word to me. Just took off his shoes, left them by the door, and disappeared into his office. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, fingers curled around a cold cup of tea, and realized I hadn't been kissed in nearly 3 months. I began to notice patterns. Phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. A second credit card I hadn't known about. Nights where he claimed to be in meetings, but his car tracker showed locations far from downtown. I wasn't naive. I knew what all of this likely meant. But knowledge without proof is like screaming into a void. No one hears you. No one believes you. Still, I said nothing. I smiled at neighbors. I folded his laundry. I packed Elijah's lunches. I kept the wheels turning, afraid that stopping even for a second would make everything come crashing down. Sometimes I would catch Elijah looking at me, concern flickering in his eyes. He never said anything outright, but he knew. Children always do. He became gentler with me, more protective in small, quiet ways. If Marcus snapped at me over something trivial, Elijah would later slip his hand into mine during a car ride or ask me if I was okay with a softness that made my chest ache. One rainy Saturday afternoon, I found myself reorganizing our medicine cabinet. I wasn't looking for anything, just trying to control something, anything. I found an empty bottle of sleeping pills I hadn't filled. I found receipts for cash withdrawals that didn't add up. And I found a folded note in Marcus's coat pocket with a phone number scribbled in a looping, unfamiliar hand. My fingers trembled. My breath caught. But still I said nothing. Because sometimes, it feels safer to pretend. To keep playing the role you've always played. Wife. Mother. Homemaker. Silently unraveling behind locked bathroom doors. But something inside me was shifting. A quiet burn. A growing refusal. I didn't know yet what Marcus was capable of. Not truly. But I would soon. It started with a phone call. I was folding laundry when the knock came on the door. 2 officers. Calm. Polite. They asked me to come with them. I asked why. They said it was a matter of investigation. I remember the way one of them avoided my eyes when I asked again. I remember how cold the air felt, even though it was mid-July in Atlanta. At the station, they showed me the pictures first. A blood-stained bedsheet. A knife. My fingerprints on the handle. A pair of torn earrings, one of which I vaguely recognized from a night when Marcus had come home smelling of perfume and regret. I blinked at the images, thinking it had to be a mistake. Then they showed me the texts. Threatening, violent messages sent from my phone. Sent to someone named Zoya. Someone I had never met. I told them it wasn't possible. I hadn't sent those messages. I hadn't touched any knife. I didn't know anyone named Zoya. But the evidence was there. At least that's what they said. They said Zoya was missing. Possibly dead. And that I was the prime suspect. Marcus showed up at the station hours later. He looked shaken. Distraught. Played the part of the devastated husband to perfection. He told the officers I had been distant, depressed. That we were having some marital challenges. That I had been under emotional strain. I wanted to scream. But my throat felt sealed shut. They booked me that night. The cuffs were tight. The holding cell smelled like old sweat and bleach. I sat on a hard bench under flickering lights, trying to understand how my life had folded in on itself in a single day. The news broke the next morning. Nurse charged in love triangle gone wrong. My face was everywhere. Old staff photos from the hospital. Images pulled from our family's Facebook page. They used one of me smiling with Elijah at a 4th of July picnic. I hadn't smiled like that in years. I wasn't given bail. The DA said the risk was too high. That I had motive, means, and opportunity. That I was a jealous wife who snapped. Elijah was sent to stay with Marcus's sister in another county. I wasn't allowed to call him. The cell was smaller than I imagined. The hours were longer. At night, I would lie on my back and stare at the cracked ceiling, trying to replay every step that led me there. Did I sleepwalk? Had I blacked out? Was I being framed? By who? Marcus never visited. But he did make public statements. My wife is a good woman. This is all so unexpected. I just want to do right by our son. He sounded believable. Heartbroken, even. But every word out of his mouth was another nail in my coffin. I learned more over the next few weeks. Zoya was 23. A cocktail waitress. Had a record for petty theft. And had been dating Marcus for almost 8 months. She had been pressuring him to leave me. And when he didn't, she vanished. There were pictures of them together on a beach in Florida. Hotel receipts. A second phone Marcus used to call her. But none of that cleared me. Because to the police, I still had the motive. The humiliation. The anger. I tried to remember that I had a son. That I had a life before this. But it felt like a past life. Something fictional. The version of me who baked birthday cakes and kissed skinned knees didn't exist anymore. I began to doubt my own memories. The stress, the sleep deprivation, the surreal nightmare of it all made me wonder, had I done something and blocked it out? Was I capable of something I didn't even understand? Every day blurred into the next. Metal tray meals. Strip searches. Cold showers. My name replaced with numbers. I waited for someone to believe me. But no one came. Until one day, in the middle of a Thursday afternoon, my public defender slipped a single piece of paper across the table. "You need to see this," she said. And for the first time in weeks, something cracked open inside me. It was a message. Sent from a hidden email account. From Elijah. And it simply read, "I don't think you did it, Mom. I'm going to prove it." I stared at that sentence for what felt like an eternity. And I began to breathe again. Elijah had always been a curious kid, the kind who took apart old radios just to see how they worked. He was quiet, observant, and far more tech-savvy than I ever realized. And when he sent that message, something inside me shifted. I didn't know what he could do, but I knew my son. If anyone would fight for the truth, it would be Elijah. He was staying with Marcus's sister, a woman named Gwen who had always been distant with me. Elijah kept his head down, played the role of the obedient nephew. But every night, when the house was quiet, he went to work. He started with the old family laptop, the one Marcus rarely used after upgrading. It had been left in a storage cabinet at Gwen's, forgotten. Elijah powered it up, guessed his father's passwords using birthdays and sports teams, and soon found himself inside a web of secrets. In the downloads folder, hidden behind a string of meaningless file names, he found it, a video. The quality was shaky, like it had been taken in secret. Zoya stood in what looked like a hotel room, acting out a scene, falling back onto a bed, clutching her stomach, fake blood spilling from her shirt. A man's voice behind the camera gave her cues. Elijah knew that voice. He watched it twice. Then a third time, just to be sure. His hands were trembling, but he kept going. He searched through Marcus's emails, eventually finding a trail of hotel bookings made under a fake name. He traced receipts to a remote cabin 2 hours outside of Atlanta. The payment had been processed with a burner credit card one Marcus had paid for in cash. Then Elijah found something else, a message Marcus had sent to Zoya. It read, "You stay quiet. A few more weeks, and she'll be gone for good." Elijah didn't sleep that night. He compiled everything, the video, the emails, the receipts, into a single folder. Then, using another account, he emailed it all to my lawyer. When my attorney walked into the prison the next day, her eyes were wide. "Your son," she said, breathless, "he may have just cracked this case wide open." The DO was notified. A motion was filed. The judge approved an emergency review of the evidence. The police followed the trail Elijah had uncovered. Within 48 hours, they arrived at the cabin. Zoya was there. Alive. Shaken, but very much alive. She had been hiding, paid off with promises and threats. She cracked under pressure during questioning, confessing that Marcus had orchestrated the entire thing: the fake murder, the planted evidence, the stolen phone used to send threatening texts. He had convinced her that framing me was the only way for them to be together. That once I was gone, they could start fresh. He didn't count on Elijah. Marcus was arrested at his office, mid-meeting. The image of him in cuffs made the evening news. I was released after 76 days in jail. They handed me back my clothes, my wedding ring, my dignity in pieces. I walked out into the sunlight, feeling like a ghost re-entering the world. And waiting at the bottom of the courthouse steps was Elijah. He ran to me. No hesitation. No shame. He held me so tight I could barely breathe. I sobbed into his shoulder, repeating his name like a prayer. Reporters tried to swarm, but security held them back. We left in silence, holding hands like we had when he was 5. In the days that followed, the truth unraveled publicly. Marcus was charged with conspiracy, evidence tampering, attempted fraud, and obstruction of justice. Zoya took a plea deal in exchange for her testimony. My name was cleared, but the scars remained. Elijah never sought attention. When the media called him a hero, he shrugged. "I just did what I had to do," he said. "But I knew better. He saved me." My son, barely 14, had done what the legal system, the police, and even I had failed to do. He had found the truth. Every night now, I say good night to him with new reverence. I watch the way he grows, the man he is becoming. And I thank the universe for giving me a child who saw me even when the rest of the world chose not to. He didn't just rescue me from prison. He rescued me from disappearing. And I will never forget that. We left Atlanta quietly. No press conferences. No interviews. No dramatic statements. Just a single moving truck, a change of address form, and a quiet drive north into the hills of Georgia. I didn't owe the world my story. They had already taken so much of it, twisted and clipped and consumed it like entertainment. What I needed now wasn't to be heard. It was to heal. Elijah and I moved into a modest rental outside of Blue Ridge. A small house with creaky floors, a wraparound porch, and woods that wrapped around the backyard like a protective arm. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. And it was quiet. In that stillness, I began to find myself again. Elijah went back to school. No press. No gossip. Just a boy trying to be a boy again. He joined the robotics team, started biking to class, and smiled more than I'd seen in months. He was still watchful, still older than his years. But there was light returning to him. We cooked together. Read together. Sat in silence together. The kind of silence that wasn't heavy anymore. Just honest. Real. I took long walks in the morning and sometimes cried without knowing why. Not from pain, at least not the sharp kind. But from a strange kind of gratitude. A release. One afternoon, as I watched Elijah sketching in his notebook, I realized something with startling clarity. I had been trying to survive Marcus for years before he tried to destroy me. The lies. The emotional withdrawal. The manipulation. It had all been there. Just quieter. More socially acceptable. Now I could see it. I began a support group. Just a handful of women, at first. Women who had been made to doubt themselves. Women who were told they were crazy, dramatic, unstable. Women who had been manipulated so deeply that they couldn't tell where their pain ended and someone else's control began. We met every other Saturday. Shared coffee. Stories. Laughter. Some tears. It wasn't therapy. It was witness. It was holding space. I didn't tell them everything about my story. I didn't need to. But they knew enough. Elijah knew too. He never asked me to explain what happened in detail. But sometimes, he would leave a note on the fridge. Just a line or two. You're still the best, Mom. We're okay. I'm okay. I love our new life. I saved everyone. There were nights I would sit on the porch after he'd gone to bed and just breathe in the pine air. Let the silence stretch around me like a second skin. Let the truth settle. I had survived. But more than that, I had returned to myself. Not as someone unbroken, but as someone who refused to stay shattered. And as for Marcus, I don't think about him much anymore. Not in the way people expect. There's no rage. No longing. Just distance. Like remembering a fire after the smoke has cleared. Sometimes people ask me if I'll ever trust again. Love again. The answer is simple. I already do. Because Marcus used to be my husband. But Elijah, not him, is the man I will always trust. The only man who saved me. The only one who never looked away. And that, to me, is more than enough. Carmen found peace in silence. But in our next story, silence is the last thing you'll find. Lila from Augusta spent years in a loveless marriage, aching for connection. When she found comfort in the arms of her pastor, it was supposed to stay secret. Until one night, she went live on Facebook, and confessed everything. The fallout? Immediate. Brutal. Unforgettable. In episode 3 of 10 True Affair Stories from Georgia, Witness how one woman's truth set a whole town on fire. Subscribe now because the next betrayal doesn't happen behind closed doors. It happens in front of the whole world.